Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand.
It is our basic human right to be fuck up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis. Welcome to part 2 of our witchcraft coverage, going through some of the terms that they use in their practice. Once again, you don't have to believe it. I don't. You don't have to practice it. I don't. But it's valuable to learn about the subcultures that operate around us, especially when those subcultures are more and more pressing into progressive circles. Yeah, witchcraft and Marxism and progressivism are closely tied, and they have been throughout history. Interesting that. Anyways, enjoy part 2.
The same as people talk about yoga, people will be able to just talk about their witchcraft practice.
I can be sat in my garden with my pendulum, you know what I mean, asking questions.
Yeah, I think it will just become something that's completely normal, hopefully.
Someone who's a witch is someone who just practices witchcraft and magic. They're doing things like spell work, anything for like prosperity, to healing, whatever they want to do.
It's someone that's in tune with the elements around them.
Honestly, someone that just practices witchcraft. It's so open.
And also putting lots of stuff in tiny jars, which is great.
The most magical times I've had is just me in a room with a candle. You feel like time stops when you're practicing.
I use all sorts of things.
I tend to do spells in little satchels.
I like to do a lot of like spoken magic and like scrying with like crystal balls and things like that. It's something that gives me that like faith and hope and that connection to like spirit and nature.
Tarot card readings. I use crystals a lot. Meditating.
My pendulum is probably my favourite. If I'm having a hard day and then I go home and I practice, it does calm me down and it makes me have a much nicer outlook on the world.
It was very much hush-hush, very much like unseen. But now, with like things like social media, it's massive, it's huge.
A lot of the stereotypes do creep in there in some aspects, but it's not fire and brimstone and you're like gathered around like a cauldron.
Because there are so many people putting their practice out there now, especially on Instagram, people are more accepting of it, like this generation especially.
It can be there for anybody.
People are really out and proud in terms of their like witchiness. In this kind of world where everything is so stressful, I think it's something for people to turn to, and the fact that it's something you can just practice at home, you can just do it in your room. The kind of ease of it is really what's made it boom.
Tools of witchcraft. So what are the things that are used within witchcraft? One of them are runes. There's ancient Germanic runes, and there's ancient Slavic runes. There's Nordic runes. There's runes from a bunch of different cultures. A lot of them have been co-opted by movements that aren't of their original source. But they're used in witchcraft. They can be applied to things to give them properties or powers if the intentions are put into it.
There's a lot of things you can do with runes. I know some of the most popular are the Futhark runes the Vikings kind of had. And you can use them in spells, you can use them in divination, which I'm sure Ood will kind of dive into right away. They can basically fortune telling, and yeah, one little symbol can have so many different meanings, but it's all kind of in a cohesive bubble.
Cool. Scrying. So that's attempting to uncover truths about yourself or the world. It's being able to search for different truths and observe different things through different means.
So my general understanding of scrying is that you don't necessarily have to be, but tools used in scrying would include a scrying mirror, a crystal ball. That is what you like. You know, the
fortune tellers.
You look into, like, you see the green witch. What's her name from Wizard of Oz? The Wizard of Oz witch. She looks in her crystal ball.
Oh,
Glenda the Good Witch?
Alphaba.
Or Alphaba?
Alphaba.
Yeah. The Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
Looks inside of her crystal ball, and she's that's scrying.
That's more Hollywood.
That's the Hollywood scrying.
But what scrying is essentially is you go into a bit of a meditative state, and you have a small light source near you that is projecting into whatever you're scrying into, the black mirror, crystal ball, one of those little scrying stones, and you start to see images, patterns forming, like an eagle, and depending on whatever the correspondence is to an eagle, is dependent on whatever question you're asking. So if I'm asking, what does my future hold in my love life, and I see, a frog, it's like, well, go for it, leap in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tea leaves.
Yeah, and it's another form of divination as well.
Yeah. Cool. Tarot cards.
Tarot.
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 Tarot. Yeah, tarot cards are a series of cards with symbols or drawings or artwork on them. They come in lots of different forms, of lots of different patterns. There's a bunch of classical tarot patterns, and then there's ones that branch out all over the place.
The ones that I did on that one.
Right. So there's, again, with card divination, a cardomancy, as it is known, I guess, is there's two general types of cards that you'll have. You'll either have tarot or you'll have oracle. Oracle cards are completely made by the author, and they or authors, I guess, and they can have any number of cards in them, and with any number of meanings.
And typically with oracle cards, when you look into it, you see the picture. The picture is very important in oracle cards. Typically, you want to have whatever your initial reaction to that card is what that meaning is associated with it. You use your intuition with your inquirer and the card image, and you determine what is being said from the imagery in the card. However, a lot of oracle cards will come with little booklets that tell you, okay, well, this is what the card typically means. But you, first and foremost, whenever you're learning oracle cards, you want to trust that intuition first, that first instinct.
And then you have tarot, and tarot are kind of more of like a playing card set. They have 78 cards, I believe, is like a typical tarot. Not every tarot is going to fall underneath this, because it still's down to the author's discretion as to, how many cards are in the deck and exactly the meaning to the cards.
Some tarot decks will just have the major arcana.
So a typical classical tarot deck will have 78 cards in it. It's split into two major sections, the major and minor arcana, and the minor arcana is then split up into 4 sections. And those 4 sections are generally cups, swords, wands, pentacles, and that's 4 sections.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say something else. I don't know what it was. And
burritos.
Burritos. Weed. And they have more set meanings.
They have very determined meanings, and even going into the minor arcana, pentacles, wands, swords, and cups. Yes, thank you. They all have specific meanings relating to the elements, relating to different things.
also going through the tarot deck, you see 5 different stories play out almost when you look from card to card to card and read them in order. You see a story play out. You see the story of the major arcana, and then you see the story of each of the suits. Yeah.
And even with the symbols like Jack, King, Queen, Page, they all have their character card, so they would typically relate to people, whereas the rest of the arcana relate to events, possibly, and like fives typically have a meaning, as well as, 5 of cups will mean this, 5 of swords will mean this, and they're very similar in that way.
Swords are bad.
Typically, yes.
Well, by the way, the number of ways that a tarot hand can be dealt, according to having 78 cards, is a number that begins with 1 and has 82 zeros following it.
Because a tarot hand can have anywhere between 1 and 78 cards in it.
Yep.
And this is going to be a 4-card reading. So let's see how the month of October 2019 is going to be for the President Donald Trump. There's the 10 of Wands. It's a lot of burdens, a lot of responsibilities. He's really tired. This is not good for health reasons. This is too much work, and he's really... The 10 of Wands is just working, and a lot of burdens in one's back. That's how he feels. He feels tired. And then the 10 of Swords. He feels like he's going to be stabbed in his back. This is how he feels. Okay? This is a most definite, very painful ending. Okay? I'm not saying that he's going to stop being president, but this is how it feels like for him. Okay? So there's some sort of ending for him in October 2019. Not necessarily his presidency, but this impeachment thing is really causing, from his point of view, is causing him a lot of damage, okay? Now, then you have the Judgment card, which is a big transformation. Judgment. This is the impeachment. I would say in the 3rd week of October, maybe officially the impeachment hearings begin. I don't know, something connected with impeachment. It's really important on the 3rd week of October. So, but something has already ended before that. Maybe the judgment, the decision comes out on the 3rd week of October. I don't know. And then finally, the 7 of Cups. So there's choices. Either this could be read in 2 ways. There's a choice. He is given several choices. Okay, he doesn't know exactly what to choose. Or is it delusional? I'm sorry to say, but he might be delusional. He might think that even though things have absolutely ended, doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to stop being president, but there's some sort of very difficult ending for him. He still thinks there's choices. He still thinks that everything is fine. Okay, this might be the way he spins it, or maybe the way he spins it in his head. I don't know. I don't think he's fully realized everything that's happened or will happen, or is going to be given choices. There's several choices. He can do this, do that, do that. So he has to choose. At the end of October, he has to choose something. And it's imperative that he chooses wisely, which I have no idea what that is. Okay.
I have a tarot deck, and every so often I just like to shuffle it and just pick a card and then try to see if it matches anything that happens in my day, or be mindful of whatever the meaning is. I don't.
Oh yeah.
You guys all know I'm a big fat atheist, so I don't really necessarily believe in the divining powers of it, but it's kind of a cool mindfulness exercise.
Oh, absolutely.
Fun thing about that, I'm also an atheist and I'm a witch. Yeah. It's you can. They're not. Yeah.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Exactly, yeah, and exactly. Although witches tend to have a spiritual aspect, and there's a little bit of that in my practice, but only in using it as metaphors for the way the world works.
It's typically the stories, the lessons there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting.
Using the stories as lessons and not as I don't
literal.
I don't believe that there is a divine. I believe that the universe is what people think of as the divine, but it's not the divine. It's just how the earth works,
Okay.
how the world works, how the whole universe works, kind of thing.
The universe with its resulting physics has birthed us. It's given birth to stars that explode and develop into new elements that eventually turn into human beings that make a podcast.
According to my tarot deck, I should invest in others because I'm hesitant. Even I should invest in others. Yeah, that's what's telling me, and not myself right now.
Interesting.
So
pentagram versus pentacle.
Good thing I'm buying my partner some glasses.
Yeah, there you go.
Very easy difference to discern. Pentacle is the circle with the star in it. Pentagram is just the star, and typically pentagram is going to be the flatter version of it. Pentacle is going to be the more 3D version of it. So there's two kind of definitions there.
Yeah, and they're used for different things within witchcraft, different purposes. Yeah.
A little bit. The star is always going to be a protective symbol.
And a symbol of mindfulness.
Yeah. When it's got the circle around it, that's the one you're going to see most often with witches, because it is a symbol of protection, wholeness, the cyclical nature of things, earth, all the elements together in a combined ring. Whereas the pentagram is more just that your basic protection spell.
So, how many ounces are in a pentagram?
So the orientation the orientation of a pentacle means different things. So when there is a point facing straight upwards, and you have the four other points splayed out there, the 4 points on the sides are to represent the elements, or the elements in magic with a K, which are fire, earth, water, and air. Thank you. And the top one is to represent the last element, or the fifth element, which is spirit, or
the above,
or Lulu Dallas,
yeah.
And
and those elements, it goes to represent. And with this point facing upwards, it's to represent mindfulness, to be aware of everything. And when it's facing down, it is to put the physical above the spirit, above the self.
It's more about the below part of things, the shadow kind of side of things, which...
Well, you always hear it associated with, like, Satan.
Yeah, that was something that definitely came from the 80s with the whole Satanist movement of like a lot of atheists wanting to claim something for themselves. But it's still very much used by some witches as, a symbol of banishment, of like super protection, super duper heavy duty protection. Like, okay, you guys are out of here.
Right.
Don't come near here.
I'm going to say this next word wrong. Athame.
Pretty close.
Athame, yeah. Athame, yeah. Oh, she says it right.
Pretty close.
Well, actually, there's a few ways you can pronounce it. Athame, Athame.
I believe it comes from
Gaelic.
Does it what?
Is it not Gaelic?
Yeah, it comes from Gaelic.
Yeah, it's
so
Gaelic and nothing sounds right.
So it's Gaelic, so we're not going to be able to pronounce it.
Ood, would you like to define athame for us?
Oh yeah, it's a knife that's used in rituals, and it usually has a black handle. And just as wands can be used as like focusing or pointing devices, this knife can also be used as a focusing device. And it can be used to point, or can it be used to cut in rituals or ceremonies?
Typically, however, the athame never is to touch blood.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, and it also
it's
also typically a double-edged blade, instead of a single-edged blade.
It's very much the karmatic and threefold law. As I do unto whatever I'm doing, I also do unto myself. It's kind of that reminder of whatever I'm putting out there is going to come back to me threefold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, although, yeah.
And like Ood said,
it's edges to it. It's going to hurt you. It's going to, if you try to hurt someone else, it's going to hurt you too.
Yeah. And it's very much a directional thing, as Ood said. And once he gets into wands and stuff, we'll discuss more about what that is used for.
Yeah.
Yes, Bigley.
What?
You had something to say? You looked like you had something to say.
No, I have nothing to say.
You looked like You were anticipating something to say. You had something to say. Okay.
Mom says not to say anything. I have nothing nice to say. Don't say anything at all.
No, I'm curious.
No, I've got nothing.
Okay. If you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. My mom always. Yeah, my mom always. Actually, my mom used to say that to me all the time.
Yeah. There was a great parenting cliche. Speaking, I guess, call back to Aleister Crowley, the Great Rite, which is casting spell as fornication. So things entering holes and things rubbing together and orgasms happening and things getting wet as a spell. How did I do?
Call back to the OTO episode.
Well, that's the traditional definition of the Great Rite. In more modern practices for rituals, you have a chalice or a cauldron and an athame to represent the womb, the athame to represent something phallic, place the tip of the blade into the chalice or cauldron, release it. The Great Rite has been performed.
This would be more commonly found in high magic and not so much in
definitely.
Low magic.
Yep.
As someone who almost exclusively practices low magic, I have no desire to ever do that.
And as somebody who has been in a coven at a very, very, very young and precious age and seeing the Great Rite performed in full as a 6-year-old might actually drive some people away from the craft.
That is
disgusting. Yeah,
disgusting. Isn't that like
child abuse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came to terms with that. It's fine.
That's not okay.
No, it's not okay.
There's
why I'm
lots
not
of
a Wiccan
reasons I
anymore.
have problems with Wiccans.
Yeah.
And that is definitely one of them.
We're not saying
I'm
all
sorry.
Wiccans are bad, but a lot are.
So the
I have not had a. No, that's not. No, I'm not going to say that. Why was I going to say that? No, I have not had a good experience. I've had a good experience with some Wiccans. I don't know. Just cut that all out. That's me not having a point.
Triple goddess, or the three-faced goddess. It's the god that pagans, Wiccans, some other practicing people believe in. It's symbolized by a circle with a full-faced moon with 2 crescent moons on either side.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Pretty.
The 3 sides of that. So the left crescent moon is representative of the maiden. So young femininity.
The waxing crescent moon.
The waxing crescent.
Get your shit together, Ood.
I know. I'm fucking up all over the place. It represents enchantment, birth, hope, vitality, youth, and health. Kind of what a young person would dream and care about, stereotypically. The middle, the full moon, represents the mother. So ripeness, fertility, stability, sexuality, life, and power.
Think of a pregnant belly.
Yeah.
Very full and swollen.
Yeah. And the
so much heartburn.
Not the rightmost crescent moon, but the
waning.
The waning?
Yeah.
Waning.
I was gonna say eclipse. That's probably wrong. Yeah.
No, eclipse is when one solar body passes in front of the other solar body, blocking the light that's reflecting off of that solar body.
Delete the VOD.
Science, kids.
Delete the VOD.
Well, where does the flat Earth fit in all that, though?
Could be comfortable. So the crone represents wisdom, longevity, repose, death, and endings. It's kind of as things fade.
And a lot of times with death, you have the concept of rebirth. With death, it's not necessarily an end to end all. It's a rebirth. It's moving on to its next phase.
After the moon fully wanes, it starts waxing again.
Yeah. And with that too, you get the winter seasons where, things have come to a very cold place. A lot of death is around. There's no fresh, luscious green around you. But it's a time of rebirth. The sun is coming back. And so it's that crone aspect.
So that's the feminine god, or the
goddess.
The goddess. The god is the horned god, the masculine god. He is depicted as having a beast's head or something that has horns or antlers. It represents a union of man and nature, survival, strength, hunting, and gathering. usually has two horns. The two horns represent different things at the same time. They represent light and dark, summer and winter, holly and oak, different opposites.
The horned god is more of a Wiccan kind of image that you get. In general, the god is all the kind of masculine aspects of God in general. So like with an eclectic witch, you have gods from, India, Egypt, indigenous gods, and that goes for goddess too. It's the feminine side of things. You get the hearth, the warmth, nurturing, abundance, whereas with God you get more of the hunting, the strength, those kind of aspects. However, there are some points where things blurred. When we talk about God and goddess in the context of witchcraft, it's more to do with masculine or feminine energies, but you can definitely have crossovers of those.
So this is not to say that people are ever exclusively have feminine or masculine energy, and that there's only two sides. It's a spectrum, like anything else. And I mean, you could also have neither, because that's also
absolutely
they're just two energies that exist.
Yeah.
They're just two types of energy that exist. There's also light, dark, and those aren't, and so
it's also a spectrum.
So it's also a spectrum. And so that's another problem I've ran into
is trying to define things into feminine or masculine.
Is
when
that
there's a whole spectrum there.
Yeah, when there's a whole spectrum, that people have be like, no, there's masculine and feminine energy, and they're exclusively different. But
that's why
that sounds like nonsense.
It is.
It is.
It is nonsense.
It's chaos.
Yeah.
It's chaos. And that's why you have to have both. You need the masculine and feminine in order to have that spectrum there. You can't have just goddess energy, which is what a lot of witchcraft today tries to do. It tries to feminize it so much with a lot of TERFs, unfortunately, who exclude male witches. And yeah. And Baron Samedi is a great example of one of those kind of in the middle deities. He's technically a god, but he's considered transgender, so he can be female or male.
And there's also Loki is another very
prominent.
And also the popularity of worshiping Loki has spiked. Like in recorded history, people have not seen. Like, it's not recorded. Like, people didn't worship Loki, and it is generally accepted that people didn't worship Loki, like, ever until modern day. But that is because Loki represents both the masculine and feminine energy very much. Look at Odin's horse is the son of, is the son of Loki as a female horse and a giant's horse.
Yeah, this is pre-Disney movies, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the definitions I have. What else would you guys like to add?
We should talk about symbolism, I think, in any of the tools.
I got one for you.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about how the horned god and the triple goddess fit into the wheel of the year and the incestuous fun?
Okay.
Oh yes, sure. The wheel of the year.
Yeah.
So we talked early on about how the cycles of the year are very important in witchcraft.
With the agricultural,
with
nature.
Seasons and cycles. Yeah.
Seasons and cycles. So generally in modern witchcraft, you see people following the wheel of the year.
It kind of starts with Yule.
You may not, it does start with Yule. You may not, celebrate every holiday on the wheel of the year.
But you recognize the patterns that are there in the
which
cycle.
there are 8 of. That's all the solstices and equinoxes and halfway in between each of them.
Fun fact, I was born on the spring equinox.
Oh, wow.
March 20th, so it fluctuates every year.
Yeah, it's not exactly that, but yeah.
But yeah, so it's a very incestuous tale, as most are about deities. It starts with Yule, where the god has not been born, or well, what has happened is it's very cyclical. So I guess we can start with what came first. Nothing. It's all just continuously going. The god has died, and light is soon to be returning. It's the darkest day of the year. But soon the god will be returning because he has impregnated the goddess with himself. And so he is going to be reborn again. And it moves into Imbolc, which has, the light is coming back. The god is about to be born. Celebrate, this pregnancy.
The goddess is in her mother phase at this point. She is growing and so as the light is coming back, as the warmth is coming back.
Mm-hmm. And then you move into springtime, and you have this abundance. She's ready to pop. The god is about to come, and he's about to bring him with him that, fertile energy of sex and all this good stuff. And the goddess is about to be fertile again when she has given birth to the god. But he's still in his youth. He's still young. He's still very innocent. And the goddess, too, has been reborn from mother to crone to maiden again, because she is no longer with God in the whole pregnancy aspect.
Yes, she's now a maiden.
Yeah.
And Beltane involves...
Beltane
involves jumping over brooms and...
Jumping over fires.
Yeah, don't get pregnant. and heading off into the woods.
And coming back smelling of
sex.
Fluids.
Pre-cum.
And cum.
And regular cum.
And then we...
regular type.
And then we started to get into, they're getting older again. They're getting into the harvest festivals. It's starting to get a little bit colder. That warmth is starting to disappear. And then before that was Midsummer, which is more into spring. Midsummer is... Beltane, Midsummer are very much those... They're fornicating. She's becoming pregnant. The harvests are reaping the benefits of what you have planted, the seeds you've planted. So now she is about to become pregnant with the god again.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah. So
I've been pregnant once.
There's 3 harvest festivals. Mm-hmm. They are
Lunasa. Sorry, Midsummer is the first one, isn't it? No, that's the...
No.
Sorry, I'm wrong. It's Lunasa.
What was the one that just happened?
Mabon.
Lunasa, Mabon, and Samhain.
Samhain is kind of your final harvest. It's the darkest time of the year.
Or in here, Mabon is your final harvest because it's cold.
Yes, yeah. Here in Saskatchewan, the wheel of the year kind of is just a turning point. It shifts from area to area, but the days can still remain the same.
As global warming increases, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
have to be wound backward.
As more of a chaos magic person, I celebrate the wheel of the year as it happens than rather than yes, I celebrate the solstices and the equinoxes on their days, but the middle holidays, the middle celebrations are they're flexible.
Yeah.
This is when we learn April showers bring May flowers, but in Saskatchewan, it's April more snow brings May more snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then June more snow.
And then June more snow, and then maybe a couple weeks of summer.
And then
snow in June,
and then snow, and then snow in September.
Yeah.
Here it is.
And back to Samhain. A lot of people. Samhain falls on Halloween, October 31st, November 1st, that kind of area. It's known as the Witch's New Year because this is when the cycle is at its point where it's taking over. The goddess is definitely pregnant. The god is dying. It's all about death and rebirth.
The goddess is also present there as the crone as well.
Yeah. It's a lot of the triple aspects of the goddess are there, more so the crone than anything.
Yeah, the crone is also present at this time. It is generally considered that the veil between this world and the spirit world is the thinnest at that point.
Whereas on Beltane, you have this world and the Fey world is the thinner kind of, so you have the land of the dead and then the land of the ethereal, basically.
How do you personally practice witchcraft in your lives? I guess that'd be a nice point to end off on.
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Not enough. As I mentioned, I'm an eclectic witch, so like I said, I take whatever, and I love it because in witchcraft this is very acceptable. I take and appreciate and learn. Very important. You're giving yourself that knowledge to properly appreciate the cultures and the practices of whatever culture is on Earth. Earth is the whole, so I'm able to take from that.
I practice mostly with squishy. I practice in just mainly, actually I practice a lot in like growing my plants and growing food.
Taking care of your animals.
Taking care of my animals.
She's very much an eclectic green witch because she is very green, but she's also super eclectic.
I just like go with the flow, and sometimes it's like, oh, I have a candle to light.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch this candle burn.
And sometimes, when you're in a rush, the low magic is what's best for you at the time. And sometimes you just get in a kick where you want chaos magic and ceremonial magic and all this high magic for the fun of it. It, again, the most important part of any witchcraft, any witch will agree on this as well as the read, is to create energy. You put more force behind whatever spell you're trying to get out. You have this container. We should talk about circles eventually. You have this container of magic and you release this energy all at once. So it's this big force that pushes.
Circles are a common tool used in doing magic, and which you put a shield around an area and your energies to like protect it from the outside.
Yeah, it protects it from the outside and it gives your magic a container, because when you spill water from your hands, it's a little less effective. But if you have a big glass and you spill the water from that, it's this big rush.
Okay.
So it's more of a force.
Okay, so, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was just going to ask, like, what do you guys do with magic, like, in your, like, day to day? Like, what's the purpose?
So recently,
not to sound ignorant.
Recently, the most recent spells that we've done have involved getting rid of a toxic relationship that we both had.
Okay.
And like we kind of just like we did a spell where we just like got rid of it all. We buried it in the ground. We asked
barren samity, a lot of death and life,
and from my perspective, energies.
Yes, yeah.
Or like the universe to
release this from our lives.
And
it was really interesting because we'd put a lot of items representative of those toxic relationships into a jar, and we ended up killing the jar by smashing it. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of symbolism. Like, yeah, symbolism and intent is the very most important, I think, aspect of witchcraft.
Cool.
Alrighty. It sounds like you practice as well.
I do practice. I'm in the day to day. I'm the kind of person that, let's say, hasn't celebrated a Sabbat properly in 8 years. But seeing a couple witchy people across from me, maybe that might change come future. Mm-hmm. Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
Mine's all chaos. All chaos. I have a little altar set at home that has everything from Tibetan magical instruments to a singing bowl to a shell that has some tobacco in it for a smudge, to a really shitty paisley handkerchief that it all sits on that has some meaning to me.
So
and
again,
all of it being as magical as any other piece.
Very chaotic, very eclectic.
Only chaotic.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, in a way, it's eclectic as well, because you're taking from different aspects. So I saw a great book that I need to get back. It's about trickster gods, and it has, Coyote, your spider, Anansi, your very typical deities that you look at, but it also had Bugs Bunny and Doctor Who as these deities because they represent this trickster aspect.
Uh-huh. That's cute.
It's pulling anything that you can put your belief into.
Oh, absolutely.
And believing in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's kind of like the tulpa then.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Actually, funny thing, as you guys have a tulpa, and very recently, not prompted, I actually created a tulpa. I'm showing him off. He is a real cutie. I don't want to describe him too closely because I don't necessarily want that out there, but That's my cutie little tulpa that I just recently made.
I like it.
I don't know what a tulpa is.
It's a thought form. It's putting your energy into a thing to make a little...
It's kind of like a name, and that's maybe something we could talk about as like magical names, craft names.
I almost wonder if there isn't another episode about the actual workings of witchcraft in the future.
Yeah, because there's a lot to cover there. So
yeah, I'd be interested in learning more about that.
Yeah, we should definitely do a part 2.
Bring some tools
absolutely.
in.
I'd be down.
Yeah, and then we can talk about our names then.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
My name is Kristen Soleil. I teach a class called Legacy of the Witch at the New School, which delves into the history of the witch through a feminist lens. If you want to talk about representations of witches in popular culture over the past 500 years, you have to really talk about representations of women in popular culture and in culture at large over the past 500 years. So the witch hunts ended around the 1700s, in Europe at least, in America. But of course the fear of witches continued, and at the same time they also morphed into kind of a joke, a horror story, something to scare kids with, to scare young women with, you know, don't walk this path, you may get into, you know, trouble with Satan or something. But it really wasn't until 1893 with Matilda Jocelyn Gage, an American suffragist. She wrote a book called Woman, Church and State, and it reframed the European witch hunts as actually a misogynistic attempt by the church and state to police female sexuality, women's bodies, women's reproductive function, and that is, to my knowledge, the first time the word witch was used in a positive way. And the funny thing about her is that her son-in-law was L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And so he was inspired by her writing to conceive of the witch as not only evil, but also good. So we have these polarities of the good witch and the bad witch, which then goes into, you know, the MGM film and sets the stage for the way we view witches forever, pretty much.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
And then you have, like, I Married a Witch in the 40s, was sort of a more lighthearted, there's like blonde witches, you know? They're like glamorous, and Bell Book and Candle in the late 50s, and then Bewitched in early 60s coincides right when Betty Friedan's putting out The Feminine Mystique. So Bewitched is kind of, you know, talking about the plight of the white middle-class housewife, just like Betty Friedan's book. And the women's liberation movement is sort of, you know, bubbling under the surface in culture at the time. And Bewitched is also, I think a few episodes were written by self-professed feminist Barbara Abaddon. So there's like some real like early feminist leanings in there. And you know, the way she uses magic is like the way early feminist thought could be conceived. Like, you know, Samantha's husband Darren's really annoyed and always frustrated she's using this magical power. It's like something he can't access, he can't control, and it gives her, you know, agency. And even though, you know, it's kind of like a fluffy, funny show, there are some like little radical currents in there that I think are picked up and expressed more explicitly in later films in the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc.
You're a big dumbhead. You're calling me names, man.
My favorite representations of the witch are pretty recent, actually. The Witch by Robert Eggers was a fantastic horror film that really used period lighting and period text to inform how people viewed witches at the time. And then The Love Witch by Anna Biller, which is a sort of saturated, colorful, meditation on sex magic and female sexuality and sort of the world through the female gaze.
So let's go 100 years back once again to the end of January 1920, when an orchestra known as Ben Selvin's Novelty Orchestra came out with their song Dardanella. Enjoy and see you in the after show. And now, a message from the goddess herself. From her own space on the Cult of Santa Valhalla Discord server. You too can join the server and talk to Val and all the other occultists by subscribing to us on Patreon. But here is the letter. An open letter to all my beloved cultists. You are beautiful and amazing people. You are a gift to those lucky enough to be in your life. You are capable and perfect just the way you are. Your hardships and challenges are never a burden, and you always have people that will be there for you. Believe in yourself the way others believe in you. You are worth it. You are loved. I love each and every one of you. Val. Do you know what the goddess does in her free time? Do you know? So, she got somebody to subscribe to the $100 Patreon tier so she could become our goddess. One of her subs, because she is a financial dominatrix. That's one of her many talents. Do you know what she's doing with her almighty power over all these people? She's making sure people take their pills on time. She's making sure people feel good. She's making sure people are happy. You know, this worship of Val started as kind of a jokey, memey thing, but, you know, fuck it. Hail Val. That's somebody I can worship. That's somebody I can root for. Hail fucking Val. And from Occultae Veritatis, I've been Ud Gallifrey. Have a wonderful night, and make sure to eat your share of vitamin C from whatever source you can. I recently read if you don't eat vitamin C, all your scar tissue starts to break down and all your old scars start to open up, so that sounds kind of bad. So make sure to eat an orange or some shit. Love you all. Have a wonderful night.